poor black girl sees her late mother's necklace in her Mafia boss's drawer, and everything she thought she knew shatters in an instant. Desperate to save her brother from a gang's death threat, she agrees to work for the city's most dangerous crime lord for 1 year. Living in his mansion as his prisoner, she discovers the truth hidden in plain sight. Her mother's distinctive gold pendant, the one pawned years ago during her cancer treatment, now sitting in his personal drawer. As bullets fly and betrayal erupts around them, their strange connection becomes clear. The Mafia boss protects her with his life, taking a bullet meant for her without hesitation. But why? The necklace is just the beginning of a 25-year secret that will rewrite her entire identity. What happens when you discover your greatest enemy might actually be your flesh and blood? And how do you rebuild your life when everything you believed about yourself was a lie, crafted to keep you safe from a world of violence you never knew was your birthright? The rain plasters Imani's dress to her skin as she faces the two mountainous men guarding Inferno's entrance. Their black suits remain crisp despite the downpour, their expressions unchanging as they assess her. The taller one's lip curls slightly. "Mr. Russo doesn't take walk-in appointments," he says flatly, "especially not from random women off the street." Imani lifts her chin, refusing to be dismissed. "I work at the harbor room. I know this is his territory. Please, my brother's life depends on this." The bouncers exchange a look. The shorter one steps forward, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Listen, miss, go home. Whatever trouble you're in, bringing it to Mr. Russo will only make things worse." "The Capellas have my brother," Imani blurts out, desperation cracking through her composure. "They're going to kill him at midnight, please!" This gets their attention. The taller bouncer touches his earpiece, murmuring something too low for her to hear. After a moment, he nods. "Wait here." Minutes drag by as Imani stands in the rain, her thin dress offering no protection. The bass from inside Inferno thrums through the sidewalk, mixing with the pounding of her heart. She touches the empty spot on her neck again, wishing for her mother's strength. Finally, the door opens. A woman in a sleek black pantsuit emerges, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun. "Come with me," she says, turning without waiting for a response. Imani follows her through the club's dim interior. The music wraps around them, deep and sensual. Beautiful people fill private booths, drinking champagne and watching dancers on elevated platforms. Everything gleams with wealth and danger. They climb a curved staircase to the second floor, where the music fades to a distant pulse. The woman leads her down a hallway, lined with oil paintings in ornate frames. At the end stands a heavy wooden door, flanked by 2 more guards. "Wait here," the woman instructs, disappearing inside. Imani's wet shoes squeak against the polished floor. Water drips from her hair, forming a small puddle. She tries to steady her breathing, knowing she has one chance to convince the most dangerous man in the city to help her. The door opens. "Mr. Russo will see you now." Imani steps into a vast office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering waterfront. Rain streams down the glass, distorting the lights into bleeding colors. The space speaks of old money and absolute power, leather furniture, antique desk, shelves of leather-bound books. Dante Russo stands at the windows, his back to her. Even from behind, he radiates authority. His suit fits him perfectly, broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist. Dark hair, touched with silver at the temples, is immaculately styled. "So," he says without turning, his voice deep and smooth as aged whiskey, "you're the girl brave enough, or foolish enough, to come to my door over Capella business." "My name is Imani Reynolds," she says, proud that her voice doesn't shake. "My brother Marcus was caught stealing from Capella territory," Russo interrupts. "Yes, I know. Word travels fast in our circles." He turns finally, and Imani's breath catches. He's older than she expected, probably in his late 40s, but devastatingly handsome in a severe way. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes so dark they seem black in the dim light. A thin scar traces his left temple, disappearing into his hairline. His gaze sweeps over her dismissively. "What makes you think I care about your brother's poor life choices?" Imani swallows hard. "Because you're the only one who can stop them from killing him. I'll do anything. Pay you back somehow. Work it off. Whatever you want. Please. He's all I have left." Something flickers in Russo's expression, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. He moves to his desk, picking up a crystal tumbler of amber liquid. "Anything is a dangerous offer to make to a man like me, Miss Reynolds." He takes a slow sip, studying her over the rim of his glass. "The Capellas and I have a delicate peace. Interfering with their internal discipline could upset that balance." "He's 19. Imani says softly. He's stupid and reckless, but he doesn't deserve to die for it. I raised him after our mother died. I'm responsible for him. And you think that responsibility extends to offering yourself to the devil to save him? Russo sets down his glass with a sharp click. You have no idea what you're asking for. I know exactly what I'm asking for, Imani says, meeting his dark gaze steadily. I'm asking for mercy from a man everyone says has none. I'm asking you to prove them wrong. The silence stretches between them, heavy with unspoken threats and possibilities. Outside, lightning flashes, casting Russo's face in stark relief. For a moment, he looks carved from marble, beautiful and merciless, through the one-way glass of his private. Booth Dante Russo observed the writhing bodies on the dance floor below. Inferno pulsed with life tonight, music vibrating through the imported Italian leather of his custom booth. He took a measured sip of 30-year-old scotch, letting the amber liquid linger on his tongue while mentally calculating the night's profits. The door opened silently, and Antonio, his head of security, approached with purposeful steps. Boss, there's a situation that requires your attention. Dante didn't turn. Proceed. A woman at the front entrance says she needs to see you about her brother in the Capellas. Antonio shifted slightly. She's been waiting in the rain for 3 hours. Won't leave. That detail caught Dante's attention. Most people who wanted his help gave up after the first hour. Description. Young, mid-20s, African-American. Works at Murphy's bar down the street. Clean record, 2 jobs. Brothers mixed up with the East Side boys. Dante set down his glass. Send her up in 30 minutes. Let her wait a bit longer. When Imani Reynolds finally entered his office, she was soaked through, her simple black dress clinging to her curves. Water dripped steadily onto his imported marble floors, but she held herself with quiet dignity despite her bedraggled appearance. Dante studied her from behind his desk. She was beautiful in an understated way, with high cheekbones and clear brown eyes that met his gaze without flinching. Interesting. Most people couldn't hold his stare for more than a few seconds. Mr. Russo, she began. I'm here about your brother Marcus, he interrupted smoothly. Age 19. Recently started running with the East Side boys. Got caught stealing from Capella territory, and now has a $50,000 debt due by midnight. He checked his watch, which gives him approximately 4 hours to live. She paled but didn't back down. I have savings, $3,200, and a car. It's not much, but Miss Reynolds, he cut in. Do you really think I need your decade-old Honda or your pittance of savings? Then what do you want? The words burst from her like she couldn't contain them. I'll do anything, please. He's all I have left. Dante rose slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. He circled his desk, noting how she tensed but held her ground as he approached. Anything is a dangerous offer to make to someone like me. I know what I'm offering. Her chin lifted slightly. Do you? He stopped close enough to smell her light floral perfume mixed with rain. You work 2 jobs to support your brother. Hospital aide by day, bartender by night. Your mother died of cancer 3 years ago, leaving you as sole guardian of a teenage boy. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment on West Pine Street. You've never been arrested, have excellent credit despite your circumstances, and consistently put your brother's needs before your own. Her eyes widened slightly at the depth of his. Knowledge. Good. She needed to understand exactly who she was dealing with. I make it my business to know everything about people who enter my world, Miss Reynolds. So yes, I could help your brother. 1 phone call and his debt disappears. But nothing in my world comes without a price. Name it, she whispered. Dante walked to a wall, safe, hidden behind an original Caravaggio. He removed a thick envelope and returned to his desk, spreading out several pages of legal documents. 1 year of exclusive employment as my personal assistant. You'll live at my estate. No outside contact except approved calls to your brother. Your duties will be whatever I require them to be. He let that implication hang in the air. In exchange, your brother lives and receives a full scholarship to any college of his choice. She stared at the contract, hands trembling slightly. I don't understand. Why would you want... My reasons are my own. He extended an expensive fountain pen. You have approximately 2 minutes to decide before I lose interest. Your brother has 4 hours to live. Choose wisely. Imani took the pen, its weight foreign in her hand. Tears threatened but didn't fall as she signed her name on every marked line. Dante collected the papers, returning them to his safe. My driver will collect you tomorrow night at 8. Pack lightly. Everything you need will be provided. He lifted his phone, dialing a single number. Vincent, the Reynolds boy, consider his debt paid." He hung up without waiting for a response. "That's it?" Imani asked, disbelieving. "That's it. Go home, Miss Reynolds. Say goodbye to your brother. Your new life begins tomorrow." She fled his office without another word. Dante returned to his window, watching until she emerged onto the street below. She stood in the rain for a long moment, face lifted to the sky, before disappearing into the night. Back in her apartment, Imani moved silently past Marcus's sleeping form on the living room floor. He looked so young in sleep, peaceful and unaware of what she'd just sacrificed for him. Her hands shook as she pulled her old suitcase from under her bed. She packed methodically, 3 changes of clothes, her mother's worn photo album, basic toiletries. Tears fell steadily as she folded each item, imagining a year without freedom, without choice. Her fingers brushed the empty spot where her mother's necklace used to hang before she'd sold it to pay rent last month. The photo of her mother smiling on their last beach trip together went on top of the pile. Imani touched the glass gently, wondering what choices her mother would have made in her position, but she already knew the answer. A mother's love meant sacrifice, even if that sacrifice was herself. The SUV's sleek black exterior gleamed under the streetlights as it pulled up precisely at 7. Imani stood with Marcus on their cracked sidewalk, clutching him in a fierce embrace. "Promise me you'll stay in school," she whispered, against his shoulder. "No more gangs, no more schemes, focus on your classes." "I promise, sis," Marcus's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "Just make it worth it," she pulled back, forcing a smile. "Mr. Russo arranged a part-time job for you at that computer repair shop you like. Don't mess this up." The driver, Carlo, according to the brief text she'd received, emerged from the vehicle. He towered over both of them, his massive frame making even Marcus look small. Without a word, he collected Imani's single suitcase and stored it in the trunk. "It's time, Miss Reynolds," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. One final hug, and Imani slipped into the SUV's plush interior. She watched Marcus through the tinted windows until he disappeared from view, her heart cracking with each mile that separated them. The city transformed around them as they drove north. Rundown apartments gave way to trendy boutiques, then to sprawling estates hidden behind wrought iron gates. Carlo finally turned onto a private drive that wound through manicured grounds. The mansion that emerged took Imani's breath away, a massive stone structure that looked like it had been plucked from an Italian countryside and dropped into their modern city. Armed guards stood at strategic points around the property, their presence both subtle and unmistakable. Carlo pulled up to the main entrance, where an older woman waited on the steps. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, her black dress crisp and formal. "Mrs. Vitale," she introduced herself, her accent distinctly Italian. "I manage Mr. Russo's household. Follow me." The interior of the mansion stunned Imani into silence. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Priceless artwork lined walls covered in silk wallpaper. Her worn sneakers seemed to echo obscenely against all this opulence. "You're sweet," Mrs. Vitale announced, opening double doors on the second floor. Imani stepped into a space larger than her entire apartment. A king-size bed dominated one wall, draped in cream-colored linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A sitting area held elegant furniture grouped around a fireplace. French doors opened onto a private balcony. "The bathroom is through there," Mrs. Vitale continued, gesturing to another door. "Your closet has been stocked with appropriate attire. Dinner is served precisely at 8. I'll return to escort you." Left alone, Imani explored her gilded cage. The bathroom featured a massive soaking tub and shower that could fit 5 people. The walk-in closet held racks of designer clothing in exactly her size. Everything spoke of careful planning and attention to detail. At 8, Mrs. Vitale led her to a formal dining room where Dante waited. He stood as she entered, impeccable in another perfectly tailored suit. "Miss Reynolds," he gestured to the chair at his right hand. "I trust your accommodations are satisfactory." "They're overwhelming," she admitted, watching a uniformed server pour wine she probably couldn't pronounce. "You'll adjust." He unfolded his napkin with precise movements. "Let's discuss your duties." Over multiple elegant courses, Dante outlined her role with clinical efficiency. She would manage his social calendar, handle correspondence, and accompany him to selected business functions. Most importantly, she would maintain absolute discretion about anything she witnessed. "Your brother's tuition has been arranged," he added, studying her over his wine glass. "A full scholarship as promised. The position at Digital Solutions is his, as long as he maintains satisfactory grades. However, his voice hardened. These benefits are contingent upon your complete cooperation. Break our agreement and everything vanishes. Understood? Yes, sir. The words tasted bitter, but she forced them out. After dinner, Dante introduced her to key members of his organization. Angelo Ricci, his consigliere, greeted her with careful warmth. He was older than Dante, with silver threading his dark hair and laugh lines around his eyes that softened his otherwise sharp features. Vincent Carboni was a stark contrast. Dante's second-in-command regarded her with barely concealed contempt, his handsome face twisted with suspicion. With respect, boss, Vincent said. Bringing an outsider into the inner circle seems unnecessarily risky. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as Dante turned to him. Are you questioning my judgment, Vincent? No, sir. Vincent backed down immediately, but his eyes promised Imani this wasn't over. Later that night, sleep eluded her, despite the sinfully comfortable bed. Imani stood at her balcony doors, watching armed men patrol the moonlit grounds below. Their weapons glinted as they passed beneath strategic lighting that illuminated every approach to the mansion. The luxury surrounding her suddenly felt suffocating. This wasn't just an estate, it was a fortress designed to keep threats out and secrets in. And she was now one of those secrets, wrapped in silk and sealed behind stone walls. The morning sun cast long shadows through the study's tall windows as Imani arranged white lilies in a crystal vase. After a week in the mansion, she'd learned to appreciate these quiet moments before the house fully awakened. Mrs. Vitale had grudgingly admitted her flower arrangements showed acceptable taste, which Imani gathered was high praise from the stern housekeeper. She'd settled into a routine, albeit an unsettling one. Each morning began with reviewing Dante's schedule, coordinating with staff, and ensuring everything ran with military precision. The mansion operated like a complex machine, with Mrs. Vitale directing the domestic side, while Angelo and Vincent managed the darker aspects of Dante's empire. Vincent remained openly hostile, watching her with cold eyes whenever their paths crossed. Just yesterday, he'd accidentally knocked over her freshly organized filing system, forcing her to spend hours reorganizing documents she wasn't supposed to read too closely. Angelo, by contrast, occasionally offered small kindnesses, a warning look when Dante was in a dangerous mood, a quiet word of advice about protocols she'd missed. Footsteps in the hallway broke her concentration. Dante strode into the study with Angelo and Vincent flanking him, their heated discussion making them oblivious to her presence by the window. The Capellas are pushing boundaries again, Vincent reported, his voice tight with contained anger. Their dealers were spotted 3 blocks inside our territory. Coordinate with the street captains, Dante replied, his tone glacial. Make an example. Imani stayed perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. She'd learned that invisibility was often her best defense in these moments. There's also the matter of missing inventory at the docks, Angelo added carefully. The numbers don't align with our records. Dante's expression hardened. Find out who's skimming, bring them to me. The conversation continued in Italian, leaving Imani grateful for her ignorance. She'd seen enough in the past week to understand that ignorance was protection in this world. Every day revealed new layers of the criminal enterprise she'd unwittingly entered. Coded conversations, mysterious deliveries, meetings with well-dressed men who carried both briefcases and concealed weapons. Later that afternoon, Imani's carefully constructed routine shattered. She entered Dante's study with his afternoon coffee, freezing in horror at the scene before her. A man sat tied to a chair, his face bloody and swollen. Vincent stood nearby, flexing his reddened knuckles, while Dante looked on with clinical detachment. Miss Reynolds, Dante said calmly, as if this were any other business meeting. Come in. Take notes. Her legs moved automatically, carrying her to the desk where a leather-bound notebook waited. The next 30 minutes stretched like an eternity as she recorded the interrogation in trembling handwriting. The man had been caught stealing from shipping containers, selling product on the side. He begged, offered names, promised repayment. Dante listened with the same expression he wore during regular business meetings. Finally, 2 guards dragged the sobbing man away. Vincent followed, leaving Imani alone with Dante. She stared at the blood drops staining the expensive carpet, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. Dante approached silently, lifting her chin with one finger. His touch was surprisingly gentle, making it somehow worse. This is my world, Miss Reynolds. You belong to it, and to me, until your debt is paid. Understood? That evening, Imani sat at the designated phone in the library, waiting for her weekly monitored call with Marcus. When he finally answered, his voice was rough with sleep despite the afternoon hour. Where have you been? She demanded. The school called. You've missed 2 weeks of classes. I'm handling it, Marcus muttered. Don't worry so much. The call ended with Imani's stomach in knots. She found Dante in his study, steeling herself for confrontation. I need to check on Marcus personally. No. He didn't even look up from his papers. He's skipping classes, throwing away the opportunity you arranged. Your brother's choices are his own, Dante cut her off. Your only concern is fulfilling our contract. He's all I have, Imani's voice rose despite herself. I need to make sure he's okay. Dante finally looked at her, his gray eyes cold. Your brother's continued well-being depends entirely on your compliance, Miss Reynolds. Don't make me demonstrate exactly what that means. Later, alone in her room, Imani methodically tested every possible escape route. The windows were sealed, the doors monitored by security cameras, the grounds patrolled day and night. Even the air vents were too small for escape. She sank onto her bed, the luxurious mattress feeling like quicksand pulling her under. 1 year, she whispered to herself, touching the empty spot where her mother's necklace used to hang. I just have to survive 1 year. Outside her window, the guards made their rounds under the rising moon, their weapons glinting in the security lights. The mansion's luxury suddenly felt like elaborate gift wrapping on a prison cell. She was trapped in Dante's world now, with all its violence and dark beauty, bound by a contract signed in desperation and sealed with her brother's life. The morning sun filtered through the study's heavy curtains as Imani moved quietly through her tasks. 2 weeks into her new routine, she'd mastered the art of being efficient yet invisible. The leather chairs needed conditioning, the bar required restocking, and Dante's desk demanded its daily inspection before his morning meetings. She paused at his imposing mahogany desk, noting a drawer slightly ajar, unusual for a man who demanded military precision in all things. After a month of captivity, she'd learned that everything in Dante's world had its place, from the perfectly aligned pen set to the meticulously organized filing system she now managed. The past weeks had seen subtle shifts in her role. What began as basic household management expanded into helping with legitimate business operations. She organized charity galas, coordinated with high-profile clients, and streamlined office procedures. Dante had noticed her aptitude, occasionally nodding approval at her suggestions for improving efficiency. Their interactions remained strictly professional, though sometimes she caught him watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His gray eyes would follow her movements across a room, before quickly shifting away, his expression unreadable. This morning, while sorting documents into their proper places, Imani accidentally opened the wrong drawer. Instead of files, she found an array of luxury accessories, gold cufflinks, Rolex watches, and other markers of wealth. But among these status symbols, something familiar caught her eye. Her hands trembled as she lifted the gold pendant on its delicate chain. The intertwined roses were unmistakable. She'd traced their intricate pattern countless times as a child, sitting in her mother's lap. The same necklace her mother had clutched, tears streaming down her face. Before disappearing one afternoon during her final months of illness, she'd returned without it, saying only that she'd taken care of something important. The medication they couldn't afford had appeared the next day. Questions whirled through Imani's mind. How had her mother's necklace ended up in Dante Russo's desk? What connection could possibly exist between her gentle mother and this dangerous man? The soft click of the study door closing made her freeze. She looked up to find Dante watching her, his customary mask of indifference cracking for the first time since she'd known him. Pain flickered across his features, quickly replaced by anger, but not before she caught it. The air between them crackled with unspoken questions. Dante took one step forward, his mouth opening to speak, when the mansion's security alarm shattered the silence with its piercing wail. The explosion came seconds later, rocking the building's east wing. Dante crossed the room in 3 long strides, simultaneously drawing a weapon and pulling Imani behind his desk. The necklace remained clutched in her fist as he pressed her low to the ground. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Gunfire echoed through the halls as he guided her to a wooden panel that swung open at his touch, revealing a narrow passage. They moved swiftly through the hidden network of corridors within the mansion's walls. Dante's movements were precise and practiced, suggesting intimate familiarity with these escape routes. When footsteps approached their position, he pushed Imani into an alcove, shielding her with his body. 2 armed men in tactical gear rounded the corner. Dante dispatched them with mechanical efficiency. 2 shots, 2 bodies falling. He kept Imani behind him as they continued their escape, one hand firmly gripping her arm while the other held his weapon ready. They encountered another attacker near a service entrance. This time, falling debris caught Imani's shoulder, drawing a sharp cry of pain. Something changed in Dante's demeanor at the sound of her distress. The cold precision of his previous kills gave way to something primitive and brutal. He fell upon the attacker with savage intensity, ending the threat with terrifying thoroughness. The hidden passage eventually opened into an underground garage housing several vehicles. Dante led her to an unmarked sedan with darkened windows, opening the passenger door. Imani started to speak, questions about the necklace burning on her tongue, but he was already moving. His hand came up holding a cloth, and despite her attempt to pull away, he caught her firmly. "I'm sorry," he murmured, and she caught a glimpse of genuine regret in his eyes as the sweet-smelling cloth pressed against her face. "But I need you safe." Her grip on the necklace loosened as consciousness faded. The last thing she felt was Dante's surprisingly tender touch as he caught her falling body, cradling her head so it wouldn't strike the car's frame. Then darkness claimed her, leaving her questions unanswered and the mystery of her mother's necklace unresolved. Consciousness returned slowly, like wading through thick syrup. Imani blinked against filtered sunlight, her head fuzzy as she tried to orient herself. The bed beneath her was firm but comfortable, nothing like her plush mattress at the mansion. Rough wooden walls replaced elegant wallpaper, and simple blinds covered the windows instead of heavy drapes. Her hand was empty. The necklace, her mother's necklace, was gone. Memory rushed back. The explosion, running through hidden passages, Dante pressing that cloth to her face. Anger cut through her lingering grogginess. She pushed herself up, ignoring the way the room tilted briefly, and tested her limbs. No injuries beyond the minor scrape from falling debris. The door wasn't locked when she tried it. That small mercy did little to temper her fury at being drugged. She emerged into a rustic, open-plan living area, all exposed beams and weathered wood. Dante sat at a heavy wooden table, methodically cleaning a disassembled handgun. He didn't look up from his task. "Where are we?" Her voice was hoarse. "Safe house, about 4 hours north of the city." He inspected a piece of the weapon. "There's water in the kitchen." "You drugged me?" "Yes." His calm admission stoked her anger. "You had no right." "7 of my men are dead." His hands never paused in their mechanical movements. "The Rossis hit specific areas of the mansion, your office, the garden where you take your morning coffee, the library where you read in the afternoons. They knew your routines." Cold fear tried to douse her anger, but Imani clung to her rage. It felt safer than fear. "So you knocked me out and kidnapped me to the middle of nowhere?" "Until we identify the informant who gave them your schedule. You're at risk." He finally looked up, his gray eyes hard. "I don't apologize for keeping you alive." "The necklace," she said. "Where is it?" Something shuddered in his expression, like steel doors slamming shut. "It belonged to someone I knew. That's all you need to know." "It belonged to my mother." Her voice shook. "She pawned it when she was dying, to pay for medication. How did you get it?" He turned back to his weapon. "I don't discuss the past." Before she could press further, gravel crunched outside. Dante had his reassembled gun aimed at the door in one fluid motion, only lowering it when Angelo's distinctive knock sounded. His consigliere entered carrying supplies, groceries, clothing, burner phones. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, evidence of a sleepless night. "It's worse than we thought," Angelo reported, setting down his bags. "They knew about the tunnel system, the security blind spots, Vincent's handling cleanup and starting interrogations in the city." Imani watched the silent exchange of looks between the two men. There was something they weren't saying. The safe house had only one bedroom. Dante made it clear she wasn't to leave his sight, which meant sharing the confined space. He worked from a laptop while she paced, too restless to settle. The close quarters made her hyper-aware of his presence, of the controlled power in his movements. As evening approached, she overheard him on the phone, voice low but intense. "Double the watch on Marcus Reynolds. If anything happens to him..." The threat hung unfinished. He'd been protecting her brother. The realization sat uncomfortably with her anger, making it harder to maintain. Like the gentleness when he'd caught her falling, it complicated the image of the ruthless crime boss. Night brought new challenges. Dante took the couch, insisting she take the bedroom, but sleep proved elusive. When she finally drifted off, her dreams filled with explosions and gunfire and blood. She woke screaming, tangled in sweat-soaked sheets. Dante appeared instantly, gun in hand, before registering there was no threat. He hesitated, clearly unsure how to handle her distress, before awkwardly perching on the edge of the bed. "It gets easier," he said finally, "the nightmares." "You have them too." Something vulnerable flickered across his face. "I don't sleep much. 3 hours a night, maybe 4. Too many ghosts." The admission hung in the darkness between them. more intimate than any touch. Dawn found them both on the porch, exhaustion etched in the shadows under their eyes. Imani handed him a mug of coffee, which he accepted with a silent nod. They watched the sun creep over the tree line, painting the forest in watercolor shades of pink and gold. The truce felt fragile, like spun sugar. Questions about the necklace and her mother burned on her tongue, but she held them back. For now, this quiet moment was enough. Two sleepless souls finding brief peace in the breaking day. A bird called somewhere in the forest. Dante's fingers tightened fractionally on his mug, hypervigilant even in this stillness. Imani sipped her cooling coffee, studying his profile in the growing light. The lines of strain around his eyes, the silver threading his dark hair, the way he held himself like a man expecting attack from any quarter. The morning air carried a bite of autumn, making her pull her borrowed sweater closer. So many mysteries surrounding this dangerous man. The necklace, her mother, the attack that seemed to shake even his legendary control. The third morning at the safe house dawned cold and gray. Imani stood at the kitchen window, watching fog curl through the trees while coffee brewed. The routine they'd established felt almost normal. If she ignored the guns Dante kept within reach and the way he checked the perimeter every hour. She heard his phone vibrate from the living room, followed by rapid Italian too low to make out. His footsteps approached with urgent purpose. "Into the panic room! Now!" Dante's expression broke to no argument as he steered her toward the bookcase. His fingers found a hidden latch, revealing a steel-reinforced chamber. "What's happening?" "Vincent thinks we're compromised." He pressed a Glock into her hands, positioning her fingers correctly. "Safety's here. Point and squeeze. Only if someone besides me opens that door." The bookcase sealed her into darkness, broken only by dim emergency lighting. Her heart thundered as she gripped the unfamiliar weapon, straining to hear through the thick walls. Their days had fallen into an uneasy pattern before this. Dante worked constantly, speaking in hushed tones on encrypted calls, reviewing documents delivered by trusted men. Imani kept busy with cooking and cleaning, finding strange comfort in domestic tasks, while trying to ignore the growing tension between them. The necklace haunted her thoughts. Sometimes she caught Dante studying her face with disturbing intensity, as if searching for answers to questions he wouldn't voice. He deflected every attempt to discuss it, but his eyes followed her with increasing frequency. A crash from outside shattered her reflection. Gunfire erupted, closer than she'd expected. Through a narrow gap where the bookcase met the wall, she could see portions of the main room. Dante moved like a predator, deadly grace in every motion. The first attacker barely cleared the doorway before a precise shot dropped him. Two more rushed in, met with the same clinical efficiency. His expression never changed as he eliminated threat after threat, protecting her with lethal competence. She should have been horrified by the violence. Instead, she found herself mesmerized by his power, the absolute control he maintained even in chaos. Every move calculated, every shot purposeful. This dangerous man was unleashing destruction specifically to keep her safe. When silence finally fell, Dante's composure cracked. "Imani?" Real fear threaded through his voice as he searched for her. Finding her unharmed in the panic room, he yanked her against his chest in a fierce embrace. The moment stretched, his heart pounding against her cheek. Then he released her abruptly, mask sliding back into place as he assessed the situation. "We need to move. Grab only what's essential." Imani followed his instructions, gathering bare necessities while he secured the perimeter. Movement in her peripheral vision made her spin, an overlooked attacker emerging from behind a door, weapon raised. Without thinking, she raised the Glock. Her shot went wide, but startled the man enough for Dante to take him down with brutal efficiency. When Dante turned back to her, surprise and respect mingled in his expression. They fled into the darkness, taking back roads in a nondescript sedan. Imani noticed Dante's jaw clenching, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Then she saw it, blood darkening his jacket sleeve. "You're hurt." She reached for his shoulder. "It's nothing. Bullet graze." "Pull over. It needs cleaning at least." "We can't stop." "You're bleeding through your jacket. 5 minutes." When he didn't respond, she added, "Please." Something in her tone made him relent. He pulled onto a secluded turnout, killing the lights. The first aid kit from the trunk contained basic supplies. Under the dim dome light, Imani carefully cut away his sleeve. The graze was ugly but shallow. As she cleaned and bandaged it, their eyes met in the rearview mirror. "Why are you protecting me like this?" she asked softly. His response came quietly. "You remind me of someone I lost a long time ago." The admission hung between them as she finished dressing his wound. His skin was warm under her fingers, solid muscle tensing at her touch. She noticed other scars scattered across his shoulder and upper arm, a map of old violence etched into his flesh. Dawn was breaking as they resumed driving, painting the sky in watercolor shades of pink and gold. Dante made a series of calls in Italian, his voice tight with controlled anger. Imani caught words like traditore and vendetta, but couldn't follow the rapid conversations. She dozed fitfully as miles passed, jerking awake at every sharp turn or sudden break. The events at the safe house played on repeat behind her closed eyes. The precise violence, the fear in Dante's voice when he called for her, the brief moment of vulnerability as she treated his wound. The man beside her was a study in contradictions. Capable of casual brutality, yet gentle when he pulled her to safety. Cold and distant, except for moments when something else flickered beneath the surface. A crime lord who kept her captive, but risked his life to protect her. His words echoed in her mind. Someone I lost. She studied his profile as he drove, wondering what ghosts haunted this dangerous man and why her presence seemed to disturb them. The new safe house materialized through the morning mist, a luxury cabin perched above a pristine lake, all gleaming wood and vast windows. Imani helped Dante from the car, concern mounting as he leaned heavily against her. His skin burned through his shirt, fever building from the untreated wound. They stumbled together up the front steps, Dante's usual grace abandoned as exhaustion caught up with him. He lurched, catching himself against her. The sudden contact pressed them together, her back against the cabin wall, his broad chest flush against hers. For a heated moment, they stayed frozen, breath mingling in the pre-dawn air. Dante's eyes, usually sharp with calculation, were hazed with fever, but intent on her face. Then he steadied himself, breaking the charged connection as he fumbled with the security panel. Inside, the cabin was smaller than their previous hideout, but expertly appointed. A great room with soaring ceilings open to a gourmet kitchen. A hallway led to 2 bedrooms, and a study equipped with communications gear. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the lake view, though reinforced glass and discreet cameras revealed the property's true nature as a fortress. "Sit before you fall," Imani ordered, steering Dante to the leather sofa. He complied without argument, a sign of how poorly he felt. She found medical supplies in the master bathroom and returned to find him with his head tipped back, eyes closed. "Let me see the wound." She kept her voice professional as she helped him remove his shirt. The grays looked angry, infection setting in around the edges. As she cleaned and redressed it, Dante watched her with feverish intensity. Over the next days, their roles shifted as she took charge of his care. Between doses of antibiotics and fever reducers, Dante made encrypted calls, speaking rapid Italian that she began to parse. Vincent's name came up often, along with Traditore and Famiglia Rossi. The investigation into the leak was ongoing but inconclusive. At night, when fever stripped away his iron control, Dante spoke of his past. He described his father's brutal training methods, designed to eliminate weakness, how he'd learned to kill at 12, made his first hit at 15, the calculated steps he'd taken to assume control, including orchestrating his father's death. He thought fear was power, Dante murmured one night, half delirious. But fear only works until someone stops being afraid. True power is loyalty freely given. Imani found herself seeing past his carefully constructed facade to the man beneath, shaped by violence, but not consumed by it. His brutality was precision rather than pleasure, protection rather than pure destruction. A thunderstorm rolled in on their 4th night, darkness broken by lightning strikes. When the power failed, Imani lit candles throughout the great room. Their flickering light caught the sharp planes of Dante's face as he watched her move about the cabin. "This has to stop," he said abruptly. "What does?" "Whatever you think you're feeling, it's textbook Stockholm Syndrome, emotional attachment to your captor as a survival mechanism." Imani set down the candle she was holding. "Is that what you tell yourself? That I'm just attaching to my jailer? We both know it's more than that." "You don't know what you're talking about." His voice was rough. "Don't I? You watch me constantly. You've killed to protect me. You keep me close but won't explain why. This goes beyond me reminding you of someone from your past." Dante rose from the sofa, moving toward her with predatory grace. The fever had broken, leaving him dangerous once more. "Walk away, Imani. Go to your room and lock the door." Instead, she stepped closer, tilting her face up to his. "No." The kiss exploded between them, years of Dante's control shattering as he crushed her against him. One hand tangled in her hair, while the other spanned her lower back, eliminating any space between their bodies. Imani matched his intensity, pouring weeks of confused attraction and forbidden desire into the connection. What began as an angry clash of wills transformed into something deeper, Dante's touch turned reverent, his lips softening against hers as passion replaced fury. Imani wound her arms around his neck, pressing closer as thunder shook the cabin around them. Later, as they lay tangled in shadows, Imani felt moisture on Dante's cheek when she touched his face. He turned away quickly, but not before she glimpsed the raw anguish in his expression. When she reached for him again, he caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that felt like penance. "You don't know what you've done," he whispered, voice thick with something that sounded like grief, despite their intimate connection. Morning sunlight streamed through the cabin windows, casting long shadows across the empty bed beside Imani. The sheets were cold, Dante's absence pronounced in the quiet room. She pulled on a robe and followed the sound of his voice to the dock outside. Dante stood at the water's edge, his posture rigid as he spoke into his phone. "Check the warehouse district again. I want hourly reports, Vincent." His tone was pure ice, every trace of last night's vulnerability erased. He wore his usual pristine suit, armor against the intimacy they'd shared. When he ended the call, Imani approached. "Good morning," she offered quietly. "The perimeter's clear. Stay inside today." He didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the distant shore. Over breakfast, the silence stretched painfully between them. Dante worked on his laptop, fielding calls with clipped efficiency while maintaining a careful distance. When Imani's hand brushed his reaching for the coffee pot, he withdrew as if burned. "So this is how it's going to be?" she finally asked, unable to bear the cold formality any longer. "Last night was a mistake." His voice was flat. "Emotional attachments are liabilities in my world. The Rossis are actively targeting my vulnerabilities. I'm already a target. Pushing me away won't change that. No, but indulging in distractions could get us both killed." Before Imani could argue further, Dante's phone rang again. Angelo's name flashed on the screen. "What is it?" Dante demanded, then his expression hardened. "When?" He shot Imani a sharp look. "Lock down his building, full surveillance on all access points." Imani's heart stopped. "What's happened to Marcus?" "He's missing. Last seen talking to unknown men outside his apartment." "What?" She grabbed her phone, but Dante caught her wrist. "Don't. Any calls could be traced. He's my brother, and I have every available man looking for him." Dante pulled up surveillance footage on his laptop, revealing the extensive monitoring operation he'd maintained around Marcus. Multiple camera angles showed her brother's movements over the past week, along with detailed logs of his activities. "You've been watching him this closely all along?" "Of course, he's your weak point." Dante's fingers flew across the keyboard, coordinating search teams through encrypted messages. "I need to go back to the city," Imani insisted. "I can help look—" "Absolutely not! You can't stop me!" Dante's expression turned dangerous. "I can and I will. Whoever's feeding information to the Rossis knows exactly how important you are." "Important to what? Your operation? Your plans?" "Important to me!" The words escaped before he could catch them. He immediately turned away, jaw clenched. "Why?" Imani pressed. "What aren't you telling me? How do you really know so much about us?" "This isn't the time. You knew my mother's name. I never told you about Marie, but you knew." The color drained from Dante's face at Marie's name. For a moment, raw pain cracked his composed facade before he masked it. "Focus on what matters now," he deflected. "Marcus needs to be found before—" "Don't you dare use my brother to avoid this conversation." Their argument was interrupted by another call from Angelo. Dante listened intently, his shoulders relaxing incrementally. "Marcus is safe," he reported after hanging up. "My men advised him to go underground when they spotted surveillance on his building. He's at a secure location." Relief flooded through Imani, temporarily overwhelming her other concerns. She sagged against the counter, shaking. Without thought, Dante stepped forward to steady her, his hands warm on her shoulders. For a moment, the walls between them thinned. Then he caught himself and stepped back. They ate dinner in charged silence, both hyper-aware of each other, but maintaining careful distance. Imani watched Dante's precise movements, seeing both the tender lover from last night and the dangerous man who commanded an empire. The contradiction twisted in her chest. Later, when Dante disappeared into the shower, Imani seized her chance. She quietly searched his discarded jacket, fingers finding a worn photograph in an inner pocket. Her hands trembled as she held it to the light. The image showed a much younger Dante, his face softer but still handsome, his arm wrapped around a stunning black woman in her early 20s. She wore the distinctive gold necklace, and Imani's heart stopped as she recognized her mother's smile, her mother's eyes, her mother's face, decades younger but unmistakable. Hearing the shower turn off, Imani quickly returned the photo to its hiding place. She had just settled onto the couch when Dante emerged, his hair still damp, wearing a fresh shirt. The weight of unspoken truths hung heavy between them as he poured them both a drink. Imani accepted the glass with steady hands, though her mind raced with questions. She watched him over the rim, seeing him through new eyes, no longer just her captor or even her lover, but someone who had known her mother in ways she was only beginning to understand. The morning sun streamed through the cabin windows as Angelo arrived, his arms laden with secure laptops and thick manila folders. Imani watched from the kitchen as the men disappeared into the study, their voices low and serious. She moved closer under the pretense of delivering coffee, her attention caught by a file partially visible in Angelo's open briefcase. "Reynolds M." Her hands trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. With deliberate casualness, she allowed some to splash near the briefcase. "Oh, I'm so sorry!" She grabbed napkins, using the cleanup as cover to glimpse several pages. Her heart hammered as she caught fragments of text about her mother, employment dates, background checks, incident reports. "No harm done," Angelo assured her, but his sharp eyes suggested he hadn't missed her lingering attention to the files. Throughout the morning, Imani waited for opportunities to speak with Angelo alone. When Dante stepped out to take a call, she found her chance. "You knew my mother when she worked for the family, didn't you?" Angelo's expression remained carefully neutral. "Marie was household staff, yes, before you were born." "What exactly did she do?" "Managed the main house, primarily." His tone carried warning. "Miss Reynolds, some secrets are better left buried, for everyone's protection." Before she could press further, Dante returned, his expression dark. "Vincent confirms we have a leak. Someone close." The atmosphere in the cabin grew heavier with suspicion. Dante restricted all communications to a handful of trusted individuals, his paranoia affecting everyone around him. The isolation amplified the unresolved tension between him and Imani, every accidental touch or lingering glance charged with memories of their night together. When Vincent requested permission to question Marcus about potential information leaks, Dante surprised everyone by consulting Imani first. "Your brother may have unknowingly revealed something to the wrong people," he explained, standing close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Vincent wants to interview him directly." "By interview, you mean interrogate," Imani challenged. "Vincent can be intense, but I won't allow any harm to come to him. You have my word, Marie." He caught himself, jaw tightening. "Imani." The slip confirmed everything she suspected. While Dante handled another secure call that evening, Imani seized her opportunity. One laptop remained open on the study desk, its screen dimmed, but active. Her fingers moved swiftly through the files, heart pounding as she found one labeled Mr. Surveillance. Inside were employment records from 25 years ago, detailing her mother's position in the Russo household. A missing persons report filed by Dante himself followed her sudden departure. But what truly caught her breath were the surveillance photos, her mother years later holding a young Imani's hand at a park, shopping for school supplies, celebrating birthdays, all taken without their knowledge. She was so absorbed in the images that she didn't register Dante's presence until his hand gently closed the laptop. She tensed, expecting anger, but his voice carried only weary resignation. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said quietly, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he added, "I suppose it's time you knew the truth about Marie, and about us." The weight of unspoken history hung between them. Imani straightened in her chair, refusing to be intimidated. "How long were you watching us?" "Since she left." His voice was rough. "I had to know she was safe." "Safe from what?" "My father." The words carried years of bitterness. "He would have killed her if—" He stopped abruptly. Angelo's earlier warning echoed in her mind. Some secrets are better left buried. But Imani was done with secrets. "Tell me everything," she demanded. "I deserve to know." Dante's hands clenched on the back of her chair. She could feel the heat of him behind her, sense his internal struggle. The confident crime boss was gone, replaced by something more vulnerable, more human. Through the window, storm clouds gathered over the lake, matching the darkness in Dante's eyes. The cabin felt smaller suddenly, the air heavy with 2 decades of buried truths about to surface. "Your mother wasn't just household staff," he finally said. The words seemed dragged from him. "She was—" His phone buzzed sharply, making them both jump. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. Dante answered with barely controlled frustration, but his expression quickly shifted to one of alarm. "When?" he demanded. "How many?" He listened intently, his free hand unconsciously moving to Imani's shoulder. "Lock it down! No one in or out until I verify personally." He ended the call, already moving with deadly purpose. "We have to go. Now." "What's happened?" "Vincent's found our leak." His eyes met hers, carrying equal measures of fury and fear, and they know exactly where we are. The rain drummed against the windows with increasing intensity, matching the turbulent atmosphere inside the cabin. Dante moved with deliberate slowness, retrieving an aged bottle of whiskey from a cabinet and pouring 2 generous measures into crystal tumblers. His hands, usually so steady, betrayed the slightest tremor. He slid 1 glass toward Imani, who sat rigid with anticipation at the small table. The amber liquid caught the dim lamplight, creating shadows that danced across their faces. "Your mother wasn't just a maid in my father's house," Dante began, his voice low and tight with suppressed emotion. He took a measured sip before continuing. "Marie was everything to me." Imani wrapped her fingers around the glass but didn't drink, watching as years of carefully maintained control began to crack across Dante's features. "I was 22 when she started working for us. She was different from anyone I'd ever known. Genuine, warm, unafraid to challenge the artificial boundaries of our world." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She'd correct my Italian when I deliberately mispronounced words just to make her laugh. He stood, moving to the window where lightning illuminated the rain-swept forest. We kept it hidden for nearly a year. Secret meetings in the garden, stolen moments in the library. I'd never felt so human. Imani recognized the expression in his eyes, the same look her mother would get when lost in thought, a mixture of joy and profound sadness. But my father had plans. A marriage alliance with the Vitelli family designed to consolidate power on the east side. His jaw clenched. When he discovered us, he didn't waste time with threats. He had one of Marie's cousins attacked, a warning of what would happen to her family if she stayed. Thunder crashed outside as Dante turned back to face her. I used every resource I had to help her disappear. New identity, new life, far from our world. The necklace, my mother's, was all I had left of any real value. Something to keep her safe if things went wrong. "You never knew about me?" Imani's voice was barely audible above the storm. "No." The word carried decades of regret. "I searched for years, needed to know she was safe. When I finally found her, you were already walking, holding her hand in a park in Michigan." He drained his glass. "She'd built a good life, normal, safe. I couldn't risk destroying that by making contact." Imani stood, anger and confusion warring in her chest. "But you kept watching us. All those years through school, after Mom got sick. You were there in the shadows." "I had to be sure you were protected." "And the necklace? When it showed up at that pawn shop during her treatments, you just bought it back? Let her think she'd lost the last thing of value she had?" Pain flashed across Dante's face. "If I'd helped then, others would have noticed, asked questions. The same people who are targeting you now would have found her through me." But something in his tone, a slight hesitation, told Imani he was still holding back. Before she could press further, his phone buzzed. Vincent's name glowed on the screen. Dante answered immediately, his posture shifting from vulnerable back to dangerous efficiency. "Report." Imani watched his expression darken as he listened. "You're certain?" "Bring him in, but do nothing until I return." "No. I want to handle this personally." He ended the call, meeting Imani's questioning look. "Vincent's identified our leak. New security hire, had access to mansion routines, started just before you arrived." "That's good news, isn't it?" "Maybe." But his tone suggested otherwise. "Get some rest. We'll head back tomorrow once I confirm it's safe." Later that night, Imani lay awake, listening to the storm, her mind spinning with revelations about her mother's past. She didn't hear Dante enter until the bed dipped beside her. Without words, they turned toward each other, seeking comfort and physical connection. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising tenderness. The gesture felt achingly familiar, like a memory she couldn't quite grasp. Imani pressed closer, letting the solid warmth of him ground her in the present moment. Whatever other secrets lay between them could wait until morning. She drifted to sleep surrounded by his scent, distantly aware of his continued gentle touches, each one carrying an emotion that felt terrifyingly close to reverence. Dante remained awake, watching her features soften in sleep. His fingers traced the line of her cheekbone again, the gesture both tender and tormented. In the darkness, with only the rain as witness, he allowed himself to acknowledge how perfectly she embodied both her mother's strength and his own carefully hidden vulnerabilities. The storm raged on outside, but within the cabin, a fragile peace settled over them. Questions still hung unanswered in the air, truths yet to be revealed, but for these quiet hours, they found solace in each other's arms. Two souls connected by a past neither fully understood. Dawn painted the lake in shades of pearl when Angelo's car crunched up the gravel drive. His usual easy manner was absent as he strode into the cabin, face grim. "The informant's dead," he announced without preamble. "Found him in the river district. Execution style, but not our work." Dante's posture tensed, his fingers tightening on his coffee cup. "The Rossies doesn't match their usual method either. Someone's playing a deeper game." "Phone records, security footage. Vincent's team is working on it. He needs to speak with you privately." Angelo glanced meaningfully at the burner phone in his hand. Dante nodded, moving toward the door. "Keep her inside," he murmured to Angelo as he passed. The moment Dante stepped onto the porch, Angelo turned to Imani with uncharacteristic intensity. Gone was his usual diplomatic polish, replaced by urgent sincerity. "There's more to the story than he's told you," he said in a low voice, eyes darting to ensure Dante remained outside. "Ask him about the DNA test." "What DNA test?" Imani's heart thundered against her ribs, but Angelo merely shook his head as Dante's footsteps approached. Armed with Angelo's cryptic hint, Imani waited until they were alone. Dante stood at the window, tension radiating from his shoulders as he stared at the lake. "What aren't you telling me?" Her voice was steady despite her trembling hands. "What DNA test?" He went utterly still, not turning around. Angelo should learn to keep his mouth shut. "No more deflections, no more half-truths. I deserve the whole story." When he finally faced her, his expression was haunted. "Yes, you do." The words seemed physically painful for him to speak. "After I found Marie, found you both, something about you haunted me, your features, certain expressions. I told myself I was imagining things, seeing Marie in you because I wanted to, but I couldn't shake it." Understanding began to dawn, horror creeping up Imani's spine. "I obtained samples, had them tested." His voice grew hoarse. "They confirmed what I'd begun to suspect. You're my daughter, Imani." The truth hit her like a physical blow. She staggered back, bile rising in her throat as implications crashed through her mind. Every interaction, every charged moment, every touch, all of it twisted into something horrifying. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Memories of their night together flooded back. She ran to the bathroom, retching violently. When she emerged, Dante stood exactly where she'd left him, looking older and more defeated than she'd ever seen him. "The fault is entirely mine," he said quietly. "I never intended. My instincts toward you were protective, paternal, but they became confused with how much you remind me of her and my own isolation from normal human connections." "Stop!" Imani held up a shaking hand. "Just stop!" Her phone chimed with an incoming message. Dante checked his simultaneously, his face hardening as he read. "Marcus," he growled, turning the screen to show her surveillance photos of her brother meeting with known Rossi associates. "They promised to free you," Dante explained tonelessly. "He's been feeding them information in exchange." Before Imani could process this fresh betrayal, Dante's phone rang. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. "Report!" Dante barked. His expression grew more severe as he listened. "When?" "Coordinate with Angelo. I'm heading back now. Full lockdown until I arrive." He ended the call, already moving with deadly purpose. "The Rossies are planning something major tonight, using everything they've gathered these past weeks. I have to get back." "I'm coming with you," Imani said automatically. "No." His tone allowed no argument. "You stay here with trusted guards. Whatever you think of me now, I won't risk your safety." He withdrew something from his pocket. Her mother's necklace, gold gleaming in the morning light. "This belongs to you," he said softly. "Whatever happens, whatever you feel about me, it's your heritage. Both sides of it." Imani accepted it numbly, the metal warm against her palm. She watched from the porch as his car disappeared down the private road, tears streaming unchecked down her face. The necklace felt impossibly heavy in her hand, weighted with generations of secrets and lies. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The message made her blood run cold. "We have your brother. Come alone to the old cannery at midnight or he dies. A photo loaded. Marcus, face bruised and bloody, bound to a chair. His eyes were wide with terror. Imani gripped the porch railing, her world spinning off its axis. In the space of an hour, every truth she thought she knew had shattered. Now she faced an impossible choice, with her brother's life hanging in the balance. Imani's hands trembled as she wrote the note to Dante, her normally neat handwriting jagged with urgency. The cabin's silence felt oppressive, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock and distant murmurs of the security team outside. I know you'll be angry, but I can't risk Marcus's life while waiting for your plan. Whatever lies between us, he's still my brother. She folded the paper carefully, placing it on Dante's pillow, where he'd find it. The memory of their intimate moments there made her stomach turn now, knowing the truth of their relationship. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on survival. Angelo's spare car keys sat in their usual spot by the kitchen door. He'd grown careless with routine, never expecting she'd paid such close attention. The gun safe's combination was trickier, but weeks of watching Dante had taught her to memorize important details. Her hands shook less as she loaded the weapon, muscle memory from Dante's impromptu lessons taking over. The guard rotation created a 3-minute window on the east side of the property. Imani counted seconds in her head, timing her movement through shadows until she reached Angelo's sedan. The engine's purr seemed deafening in the dusk quiet, but she was already accelerating down the private road before shouts of alarm rose behind her. City lights grew larger as she drove, her mind racing through everything she'd absorbed from Dante's world. How to move undetected, where to park to avoid cameras, the best approaches to scout a location. She was her father's daughter, after all. The thought brought a bitter taste to her mouth. The abandoned cannery loomed against the midnight sky, decades of rust and neglect creating perfect shadows for an ambush. Imani circled the building first, noting the poorly concealed vehicles that confirmed her suspicions. This was definitely a trap, but knowing that gave her an advantage they didn't expect. She found Marcus exactly where the photo showed, tied to a chair in the center of the vast processing floor, blood darkening his shirt. His eyes widened in recognition as she emerged from the shadows, then filled with terror. "No! Imani, run! It's a trap. Of course it is." Vincent's voice echoed as he stepped into view, flanked by armed men. Though I expected more resistance from Dante's precious daughter. The word hit her like a physical blow. "You knew?" "I've known since before you did." Vincent's smile was cruel. Amazing what you can find in private files when you have the right access. Watching Dante's legendary control crumble around you has been entertaining. He gestured, and one of his men handed him a phone. "Now, let's call Daddy Dearest and explain his options." Dante's face appeared on the screen, impossible to read. Vincent laid out his demands with the smooth confidence of someone holding all the cards, territory, control, complete surrender. To emphasize his point, he turned and shot Marcus in the leg. Imani's brother screamed, the sound echoing off metal walls. She lunged forward, but strong hands held her back, forcing her to watch helplessly as blood spread across Marcus's jeans. "You should have studied history better," Dante's voice was ice-cold through the speaker. "No Russo has ever surrendered territory under threats. If they're my blood, they'll understand the sacrifice." Imani's heart stopped at his next words. "Make it look like an accident." The call ended. Vincent stared at the blank screen, face contorting with rage. "Fine. If that's how he wants to play it." He raised his gun toward Marcus's head. But Imani had caught what Vincent missed. Those specific words, "make it look like an accident." She'd heard them before in one of Dante's coded conversations with Angelo. Not an abandonment, but a signal. The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Imani dropped and kicked out hard, years of self-defense classes finally serving their purpose. Her foot connected with Vincent's knee. His shot went wild, the muzzle flash briefly illuminating chaos as figures burst through doors and windows. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Imani stayed low, crawling toward Marcus's choked sounds of pain. Her hands found his legs, making him cry out as she began dragging him backward. "I've got you," she whispered fiercely. "Just hold on." Bullets pinged off metal all around them. Someone screamed in the darkness. A body fell nearby with a wet thud. Imani kept pulling her brother inch by inch, using the gunfire and shouts to cover their movement. She bumped into something solid and nearly screamed until a familiar voice whispered, "Keep going. There's cover behind these crates." Angelo. She could have cried with relief. More shots, more shouts. Blood made Marcus slippery in her grip, but she refused to let go. They were so close to safety, just a few more feet. Through acrid smoke and muzzle flashes, a familiar silhouette emerged, Dante moving like a ghost through the chaos. His movements were precise, each shot finding its mark as he carved a path toward Imani and Marcus. Behind the crates, Angelo kept pressure on Marcus's leg wound while Imani watched her father's lethal dance. A Rossi gunman spotted them, weapon swinging their direction. Before Imani could react, Dante was there, putting his body between them. The impact of the bullet threw him forward, blood darkening his shoulder, but he returned fire without hesitation, dropping the attacker. "Stay down," he ordered through gritted teeth, voice tight with pain but unwavering. The battle spread beyond the cannery as phones buzzed with alerts. Dante's forces were moving simultaneously across the city, targeting Rossi operations and Vincent's conspirators. Even wounded, Dante coordinated the assault, dispatching orders between exchanges of gunfire. Vincent's voice cut through the chaos. "You're losing everything for them, Dante. Your empire, your reputation, all for some whores bastards." Dante's response was 3 precise shots. Vincent's body hit the ground, eyes still wide with surprise. "Get them out," Dante commanded Angelo, already moving toward the exit. "I'm finishing this tonight." Despite Angelo's protests about his injury, Dante personally led the assault on the Rossi compound. Blood soaked his shirt, but his aim remained steady as he confronted Anthony Rossi in his own office. The family patriarch sneered. "All this for that black whore's daughter? You've gone soft, Russo." Dante's expression never changed as he pulled the trigger. "That's my daughter you're talking about," he said to the room of stunned observers. "My blood, under my protection. Remember that." The message spread quickly through the underworld. Imani Reynolds was to be recognized as a Russo, with all the power and protection that name carried. At the hospital, Imani kept vigil beside Marcus's bed. The doctor said he'd make a full recovery, but seeing him so pale and still terrified her. She dozed in the uncomfortable chair until familiar footsteps entered the room. Dante stood in the doorway, arm in a sling, looking uncertain for the first time since she'd known him. The weight of everything between them, the contract, their ill-fated intimacy, the revelation of their true relationship, made the air heavy with unspoken words. "The situation is contained," he said finally. "Vincent's network has been eliminated. The Rossis won't be a problem anymore." Imani nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Thank you for coming for us." "I will always come for you." He moved closer, placing an envelope on Marcus's bedside table. "This is a release from your contract. Once he recovers, you're both free to go wherever you choose. I'll ensure you have the resources to start fresh anywhere." The city's power structure shifted over the next 2 weeks. Old alliances crumbled while new ones formed around the demonstrated strength of the Russo family. Imani used this time to process everything she'd learned. She visited her mother's grave, the gold pendant hanging heavy around her neck. Standing there, she finally understood the impossible choice Marie had faced. Between the man she loved and the safety of their unborn child, the secret she'd carried to protect her daughter from a dangerous world. "You did what you had to do," Imani whispered, touching the carved roses. "I understand now." Marcus recovered steadily, his natural resilience asserting itself. They talked for hours in his hospital room about their mother, about Dante, about the truth of their heritage. Marcus struggled with anger at first, at their mother's secrets, at Dante's manipulations, at his own unwitting role in Vincent's betrayal. "What are we supposed to do now?" he asked when the doctors finally approved his release. "Just pretend none of this happened." Imani fingered the pendant, remembering the way Dante had thrown himself between her and danger without hesitation. The genuine pain in his eyes when he spoke of their mother. The careful way he'd tried to protect her, however misguided his methods. She thought of Marie, young and in love, making the hardest choice a mother could make. Of Dante, searching for years, watching from afar, trying to honor that choice while ensuring their safety. 2 people who'd loved each other enough to sacrifice everything. Their relationship could never be conventional. Too much had happened. Too many lines had been crossed. But underneath Dante's cold exterior and brutal methods was a capacity for love that had survived decades of loneliness and regret. The rebuilt mansion looked different in the soft morning light, less like a fortress and more like what it was. A home built by a man who'd lost everything once and spent his life trying to protect what remained. Imani walked through the front door, not as a captive or an employee, but as something both simpler and more complicated. A daughter coming home to the father who'd loved her mother enough to let them go. and who'd nearly lost everything trying to keep her safe when their worlds collided again. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Dante's study as Imani reviewed quarterly reports from their legitimate businesses. 6 months of careful restructuring had shifted significant portions of their income into legal channels: real estate, import, export, technology investments. The transition hadn't been easy, but her fresh perspective combined with Dante's strategic mind proved surprisingly effective. She touched the gold pendant absently, a habit that still reminded her of her mother. The carved roses caught the light, a constant connection to both her past and present. "The Martinez family is getting nervous about our expansion into tech," she said as Dante entered, his movement still carrying that lethal grace despite the reading glasses he now wore for paperwork. "Let them be nervous." He settled behind his desk, studying her with pride barely hidden beneath his usual stern expression. "Your initiative with the startup acquisitions has given us leverage without a single threat needed." Imani smiled, remembering how skeptical his old guard had been when she first proposed modernizing their operations. "Violence is expensive," she'd argued in that first tense meeting. "Technology is the future of power." Now, 6 months later, their hybrid approach, her innovative solutions backed by Dante's carefully wielded authority, had transformed the Russo family's standing. They were no longer just feared, but respected as pioneers of criminal evolution. "The families are gathering tonight," Dante reminded her, his tone carefully neutral. "Are you prepared?" Imani straightened, channeling the poise she'd learned from watching him. "I've memorized every alliance, rivalry, and outstanding debt. Angelo quizzed me for hours." "Good." Dante's lips twitched. "Though your natural intelligence serves better than memorized facts, you see patterns others miss." She recognized the compliment for what it was. Acknowledgement of how she'd spotted the weakness in the Chen family's shipping operations that led to a bloodless takeover of 3 major ports. The gathering was held at Inferno, now rebuilt into an even more impressive display of power and luxury. Imani wore a tailored black dress that projected elegant authority, the gold pendant prominent against her collarbone. As she descended the stairs beside Dante, conversations hushed. Every major family had sent representatives: the Chens, Martinez, Kovakovs, even the remnants of the Rossis under new leadership. They watched with carefully concealed interest as Dante guided her through the crowd, making pointed introductions. "My daughter has already proven herself invaluable to our operations," he said smoothly to the Chen matriarch, who studied Imani with shrewd eyes. "Her insights into modern markets have increased our legitimate holdings by 40%. The underlying message was clear. Imani wasn't just his blood, but a formidable force in her own right. Each introduction reinforced her position while subtly highlighting the advantages of her progressive approach. When everyone had assembled, Dante called for attention. The room fell silent instantly. Old habits died hard, and his reputation still commanded immediate respect. "Many of you remember when I took control of this family," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly. "I built our empire through necessary violence, because those were violent times. But times change. The future belongs to those who adapt." He gestured to Imani, who stepped forward with practiced grace. "My daughter represents that future. She is my blood, my heir, and the architect of our evolution. Under our joint leadership, the Russo family will continue to expand our influence through both traditional means and innovative methods." His expression hardened slightly. "Let me be absolutely clear. Any move against her will be considered a personal declaration of war against me. Those who support her vision will find profitable partnerships. Those who oppose it will not survive to regret their choice." The threat hung in the air for a moment before he smiled coldly. "Now, let's discuss the future." Hours later, after the last alliance had been secured and the final respect paid, Dante and Imani drove through the quiet city streets. The cemetery was empty this late, peaceful under the rising moon. They found Marie's grave easily. The fresh flowers Imani brought weekly brightened the simple headstone. Dante placed a bouquet of red roses beside them, his movements unusually gentle. "She would be proud of you," he said quietly. "You have her intelligence, her ability to see the best path forward, but you also have strengths that are entirely your own." Imani watched him trace Marie's name on the stone. "Do you regret not telling her about finding us?" "Every day." His voice was rough with rare emotion. "But she made her choice to protect you, and I had to honor that, even when it meant watching from a distance as you struggled after her death." "Is that why you stepped in when Marcus got in trouble? You were already watching over us?" Dante nodded. I told myself I was respecting Marie's wishes by staying away. But when you walked into my club that night, so much like her, but entirely yourself, I couldn't maintain that distance anymore. They stood in comfortable silence, the gold pendant gleaming in the moonlight. Finally, Dante spoke again. I made many mistakes with you both, but Marie gave me the greatest gift possible, a daughter who embodies the best of her spirit while forging her own path. Whatever the future holds, know that I am proud to stand beside you as we build it. Imani leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid strength that had protected her even before she knew why. Together, they paid their respects to the woman who had loved them both enough to make the hardest choice, whose sacrifice had ultimately led them back to each other. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and necessary compromises between Imani's vision and the brutal realities of their world. But standing there, united by blood and something deeper, they were ready to face it together.